Kinjiro Akiyama's childhood friend thinks he's too long-winded and not manly enough. She told him to learn how to be like a campus ruler, the kind of guy who's a bit of a rebel. Little did Kinjiro Akiyama know. Campus ruler turned his attention to Kinjiro Akiyama's mouth. Thinking deeply, he frowned and said, "I heard you can talk so much you could make a mute person speak." Then he asked Kinjiro Akiyama to harass his autistic sister. His sister would give Kinjiro Akiyama $1,000 for every sentence she spoke, but that campus ruler was still too naive. An evil cultivator has their own methods. Kinjiro Akiyama walked to the back row of the classroom, gently knocked on the desk of his autistic sister, and said, "Won't you explain to everyone about what happened last night, about you licking my feet while I was asleep?" Hana widened her eyes, and a crack appeared on her icy face. She replied, "I didn't." Kinjiro Akiyama confidently turned around, flashed a bright smile to the campus ruler, and said, "Pay up." Chapter 1. Won't you explain to everyone about what happened last night, about you licking my feet while I was asleep? The moment Kinjiro Akiyama finished speaking, the entire classroom fell into a dead silence. The gloomy girl who had been keeping her head down in the corner slowly widened her eyes, and a crack appeared on her icy face. She bit her lip and said, "I didn't." But campus ruler quickly stepped forward, his eyes filled not with disgust, but with deep admiration. Kinjiro Akiyama thought he was just joking, but to Kinjiro Akiyama's surprise, without a word, he transferred the money to Kinjiro Akiyama. As he transferred the money, the so-called campus ruler who could supposedly kill without blinking was shaking. He held Kinjiro Akiyama's hand as if he had found a lifeline. He said, "Master, please save my sister." He told Kinjiro Akiyama that his parents had taken Hana to see countless psychologists, both domestic and international, and the answer was always the same. The best solution is to find a peer who can make her feel the beauty of this age. But Hana hated anyone coming close to her except family. At their age, it's all about face, and no one wanted to take on the troublesome task of dealing with a temperamental princess like Hana. The campus ruler said, "Here's the deal. If you pester her more and get her to say even one more word, I'll give you an extra 1,000. The campus ruler held Kinjiro Akiyama's hand as if he had seen his savior. Kinjiro Akiyama held his hand, looking at the $1,000 as if Kinjiro Akiyama were seeing a living Bodhidharma delivering money. Kinjiro Akiyama smiled. "Isn't it just harassment? I'm good at this. From elementary school to now, I've always been considered a reincarnation of a fly in the eyes of my teachers. In elementary school, to make me shut up, the homeroom teacher even made me sit next to a hearing-impaired classmate. Later, I learned sign language and secretly chatted with my desk mate under the desk. My hands moved as fast as if I were making hand signs like Naruto, flipping with such speed it was terrifying. When my desk mate got excited, his fingers nearly cramped up. The teacher contacted my mom and told her that I could talk to anyone, even a dog on the street, and suggested she take me to see a doctor. This was tailor-made for me, especially since Hana is so pretty." Kinjiro Akiyama turned to look at Hana. Hana had only said a few words, then lowered her head again. She seemed frustrated with herself for speaking involuntarily and was now protesting by keeping her head down. Akari, who had been completely ignored, leaned over. She saw Kinjiro Akiyama take the money from the campus ruler and immediately tried to grab Kinjiro Akiyama's phone. She said disapprovingly, "Kinjiro Akiyama does not eat food thrown at him. Besides, our focus should be on studying now. You should stop hanging out with shady people." A campus ruler who had just been her crush turned around, his expression cold and distant, returning to his normal self. He asked in a deep, deliberate voice, "Who are you calling shady?" Akari choked and immediately fell silent, biting her lip. Kinjiro Akiyama pulled her hand away. Kinjiro Akiyama realized then that Akari only dared to boss Kinjiro Akiyama around. Akari seemed like she wanted to say something else, but just then the bell for class rang, and Kinjiro Akiyama turned and returned to his seat. That day, the campus ruler used his money power to make sure Kinjiro Akiyama sat next to Hana. He said, "Teacher, my sister is here to make friends. Kinjiro Akiyama would be perfect for her. The weather's getting hotter. I think we should install air conditioning in the school." The teacher fell silent. When Kinjiro Akiyama moved to sit next to Hana, she was still lying on the desk, asleep. Akari turned her head slightly to look at Kinjiro Akiyama, her gaze as if she were trying to burn a hole through Kinjiro Akiyama. Kinjiro Akiyama stared at Hana's neck for the whole class. She's clearly awake, but to avoid sitting at the same table with Kinjiro Akiyama, she doesn't even lift her head. How interesting. Chapter 2. After the second class ended, Kinjiro Akiyama leaned close to Hana's ear and whispered, Hee. Hana, do you know your neck is so white, like a duck's neck? I just want to bite. Maybe Kinjiro Akiyama was too close, as Hana jumped in surprise, immediately looking at Kinjiro Akiyama with a horrified expression. Kinjiro Akiyama quickly snapped a photo of her face with his phone and sent it to her brother. This doesn't look like an autistic kid, isn't it? Pretty interesting. That little expression was more vivid than mine. But after the next few classes, Kinjiro Akiyama realized how difficult Hana was to deal with. No matter what Kinjiro Akiyama said, she remained like a statue, completely still. By the time the school bell rang, Kinjiro Akiyama was dry-mouthed from talking, but still interested, because no one has ever listened to Kinjiro Akiyama talk so much without calling Kinjiro Akiyama an idiot. Even if Kinjiro Akiyama doesn't make money from this, Kinjiro Akiyama has found a kindred spirit. Kinjiro Akiyama watched Hana's slender, fair fingers slowly close her textbook and sneered. I said, so what were you playing at during English class? Hana's fingers stiffened, and she glanced at Kinjiro Akiyama before turning towards the door. Kinjiro Akiyama grabbed his backpack and hurried to catch up. Her brother had told Kinjiro Akiyama earlier that their family's driver would take Kinjiro Akiyama home today. Someone yanked Kinjiro Akiyama's backpack, and Kinjiro Akiyama nearly rolled his eyes in frustration as Kinjiro Akiyama turned around to see Akari standing behind Kinjiro Akiyama, her face dark with anger. She puffed up in irritation and said, She doesn't even want to talk to you, and you're still trying to lick up to her. Kinjiro Akiyama, how shameless can you be? This was the second time today. Even though she was the goddess Kinjiro Akiyama had secretly admired for a long time, Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't tolerate her insulting Kinjiro Akiyama repeatedly. Kinjiro Akiyama lifted his backpack and swung it hard into her face. Akari stared at Kinjiro Akiyama in shock, and Kinjiro Akiyama snapped. Are you fing crazy? When I act like a dog licking you, you're fine with it. But when I'm doing the same to someone else, suddenly I'm shameless. What's wrong? Just because it's you, you deserve to be licked? Same thing, can't I change the flavor? And what did you say this morning? Telling everyone I'm disgusting and low class for talking dirty to a girl. Kinjiro Akiyama laughed angrily, because Kinjiro Akiyama hadn't even wanted to deal with this. He said that because Kinjiro Akiyama had shared a naked video with her and left some suggestive comments. However, she was the one who kept sharing videos of men with abs and commenting things like, that kind of men is worthy of me taking off my high-waisted underwear, and stuff like, where is true heart for heart? Only speed changes voice. Other people's kids have already bought paper. Your kid is still on the paper, and a bunch of other raunchy comments Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't even repeat. Kinjiro Akiyama thought she was into it and liked seeing those comments, so Kinjiro Akiyama spent nights researching how to talk dirty. Kinjiro Akiyama started sharing similar videos, just hoping she'd pay more attention to Kinjiro Akiyama. When she does it, it's fine, but when Kinjiro Akiyama does it, it's disgusting. She's so hard to please. If she loves it so much, she can go to hell for all I care. Kinjiro Akiyama shoved her away and quickly ran after Hana, who was almost out of sight. Kinjiro Akiyama called out, Hana, why aren't you waiting for me? Hana, of course, didn't answer. Kinjiro Akiyama turned and looked at the nearby convenience store, then commanded, Stop. Don't move. To Kinjiro Akiyama's surprise, she actually stood still. Kinjiro Akiyama walked around her in a circle, then said, Wait for me. I'm going to buy something, or I'll tell your brother about you stealing a kiss from me. Hana looked at Kinjiro Akiyama, and this time she didn't seem as shocked as this morning, but her peach blossom eyes still looked at Kinjiro Akiyama in confusion. When Kinjiro Akiyama came out with an ice lolly from the convenience store, Kinjiro Akiyama saw Hana standing obediently by the trash can. Tisk, Kinjiro Akiyama squinted his eyes. I thought I liked the lively type like Akari. How come someone as gloomy and obedient as Hana, a yandere, is so cute too? Kinjiro Akiyama ate his ice cream while thinking and finally came to a conclusion. I don't have a specific type. I'm just plainly lustful. Chapter 3. Kinjiro Akiyama shoved an ice lolly into Hana's hand, but she didn't take it. It fell to the ground with a slap. She continued walking ahead, and Kinjiro Akiyama quickly picked it up and rushed to catch up, shoving it back into her hand. It fell again. Kinjiro Akiyama was getting mad. This little brat. Kinjiro Akiyama caught up in a few steps, grabbed her clenched hand. Hana finally stopped pretending to be calm. She took a deep breath and stepped back, her face turning bright red. Kinjiro Akiyama grinned and handed the ice lolly to her. She took it. They walked side by side, but Hana still didn't eat the ice lolly, just holding it in her hand. So Kinjiro Akiyama leaned closer and whispered to her, "No need to be shy. I won't tell anyone about the fart you quietly let out earlier." Hana broke the ice lolly and shoved it into her mouth, speeding up her steps. See, when people feel embarrassed, they always pretend to be busy drinking when there's water, sucking on an ice lolly when there's one. Kinjiro Akiyama watched Hana slowly lick the ice lolly and suddenly had an idea. "Hana, do you know that crushed ice can cool you down? In the village, when it's hot, they prepare some for cows suffering from heat stroke. So don't go picking up random crushed ice from the ground to eat." Hana stopped eating and put the ice lolly down, her lips now red from the cold. She quietly stared at Kinjiro Akiyama. It seemed like Kinjiro Akiyama really had no more tricks up his sleeve with her. Kinjiro Akiyama felt a little awkward, realizing that this topic might have been a bit gross. Kinjiro Akiyama was about to change the subject when Hana spoke the second sentence of the day. She frowned and said, "It's a pig." Kinjiro Akiyama froze for a moment, then, overjoyed, responded, "Right. It's a pig. I remembered it wrong. Hana, we really have a lot in common. You watch these kinds of low IQ videos too." Kinjiro Akiyama had thought that Hana, the autistic girl, didn't surf the internet, but apparently she was also a pro at it. Kinjiro Akiyama was elated. Kinjiro Akiyama had really found a kindred spirit in life. After getting out of the luxury car, Kinjiro Akiyama waved goodbye enthusiastically to the campus ruler. But when Kinjiro Akiyama turned around, Kinjiro Akiyama almost had a heart attack. Akari was standing at the top of the stairs, her eyes cold as ice. She frowned and said, "Does your mom know you're getting so close to a girl who's obviously sick in the head?" Kinjiro Akiyama handed her the extra ice lolly Kinjiro Akiyama had bought. Akari's expression softened a little, and she reached out to take it, but still couldn't stop talking. She said, "Hana is the kind of person with a mental illness. Do you think everyone's as nice as me? I've had to deal with you yelling since we were kids. My brain's almost falling apart." The next second, Kinjiro Akiyama forcefully crushed the now melted ice lolly in his hand and slapped it straight into her face. She screamed and staggered back 2 steps, and the motion sensor light on the stairs lit up. Akari's face turned red, and she glared at Kinjiro Akiyama fiercely. She bit her lip and said, "Are you crazy?" Kinjiro Akiyama pulled out a tissue to wipe his fingers as Kinjiro Akiyama walked past her. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "You're talking about someone being sick? I think you're the most messed up one here." Akari turned around, but by then Kinjiro Akiyama had already turned and climbed up the second flight of stairs. Next day, during break, Kinjiro Akiyama asked to add Hana on WeChat, and for once she actually acknowledged Kinjiro Akiyama. She said no. Kinjiro Akiyama picked up his phone to take a picture of her. She frowned and swatted Kinjiro Akiyama's hand away. Kinjiro Akiyama reached out to grab her phone, and she recoiled in terror as if Kinjiro Akiyama was going to assault her, quickly taking 2 steps back. Just as they were bickering, Akari knocked on Kinjiro Akiyama's desk. She said, "Kinjiro, I won't hold last night against you. My mom's making sweet and sour ribs tonight. Let's go home together after school." Kinjiro Akiyama stopped tormenting Hana and gave Akari a sideways glance. Is she crazy? Did she not understand what I said yesterday? Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't be bothered to deal with her. Kinjiro Akiyama turned around and realized Hana had already gotten up and walked out of the classroom. Kinjiro Akiyama took a deep breath and quickly followed her outside. Hana was standing at the classroom door, just standing there like a dazed goose, not moving. Kinjiro Akiyama figured she probably wanted to avoid Kinjiro Akiyama, but didn't know where to go. Her brain probably overheated. Kinjiro Akiyama found it amusing and reached out to poke her. "Hey, seriously, not adding me on WeChat?" She didn't respond, just continued standing there in a daze until the class bell rang. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "Hey, the teacher's coming." Kinjiro Akiyama tugged at her sleeve, but Hana remained frozen. "You too? What are you doing standing here?" The music teacher frowned. Kinjiro Akiyama glanced at the dazed Hana and then looked back at the music teacher. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "Teacher, Hana's stomach hurts. She's about to poop herself." Chapter 4. Hana's pupils trembled slightly, surprised by Kinjiro Akiyama's random fabrication. The teacher waved her hand, telling Kinjiro Akiyama to take her to the infirmary. Kinjiro Akiyama had no musical sense, but Kinjiro Akiyama managed to escape from music class purely because Hana looked like the perfect little angel in the teacher's eyes. She was dragged along like a rock by Kinjiro Akiyama, and as they passed a window, Kinjiro Akiyama caught sight of Akari, her face dark with anger. Kinjiro Akiyama asked Hana, "Have you never skipped class before?" Kinjiro Akiyama pried open her tightly clenched hand, feeling her warm palm against Kinjiro Akiyama's. A twinge of itchiness passed through Kinjiro Akiyama, and Kinjiro Akiyama shamelessly slipped his hand into hers. She didn't pull away. Kinjiro Akiyama dragged her through the small alley by the school gates and found their favorite noodle shop. The owner happily served up a bowl of noodles. The owner asked, "Bringing a friend? Isn't it class time?" Kinjiro Akiyama smiled brightly and replied, "Yeah, we're skipping class." Hana's breath caught. She raised her hand to cover Kinjiro Akiyama's mouth, looking so terrified she probably wished she could swallow Kinjiro Akiyama's words back. Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but laugh. Who invented Hana, this little thing? So cute. She was totally hitting Kinjiro Akiyama's sweet spot. Kinjiro Akiyama brought over 2 small bowls. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "You have half, I have half, and the feelings won't fade." Hana frowned as she stared at the noodles, but didn't say anything. Kinjiro Akiyama thought she was disgusted by Kinjiro Akiyama, but to Kinjiro Akiyama's surprise, she handed Kinjiro Akiyama her phone. Kinjiro Akiyama understood what she meant. She was saying she had money and they could each buy their own bowl. Kinjiro Akiyama was speechless. The truth was Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't finish the noodles anyway. Kinjiro Akiyama had already eaten 3 jianbing buns for breakfast. There was no way Kinjiro Akiyama could eat a whole bowl. Taking advantage of the moment, Kinjiro Akiyama grabbed her phone and added himself on WeChat. Hana paused, but didn't stop Kinjiro Akiyama. Hana ate gracefully. Even the most ordinary bowl of noodles seemed refined in her hands. When the meal was over, Kinjiro Akiyama wiped his mouth and pulled her to turn around and run. Hana was dazed, stumbling as she tried to keep up until Kinjiro Akiyama finally turned around after running out of the alley. The expression in her eyes was full of disbelief. It seemed like she had never done something so rebellious before. Her heartbeat was quick. Kinjiro Akiyama could even hear it when they stood face to face. She bit her lip, pulling Kinjiro Akiyama to go back, but Kinjiro Akiyama stopped in his tracks, acting indifferent, and said, "We already skipped. No need to go back." How embarrassing. Hana pressed her lips together, staring at Kinjiro Akiyama in silence. She wasn't angry. Her eyes were filled with grievance, but there was still a trace of determination to stick to her principles. Kinjiro Akiyama smiled mischievously and said, "You can go back, but you'll have to tell the owner. Sorry, we came to pay." "Then I'll go back with you." Hana stood at the alley entrance, hesitating for a full 5 minutes before finally giving in, reluctantly taking Kinjiro Akiyama's hand and heading back. The owner was wiping down the table, and when he saw them standing there like statues at the door, Kinjiro Akiyama nudged her and said, "Say something." Hana's palm was covered in tiny beads of sweat, and her cheeks were flushed red. Kinjiro Akiyama thought she was about to give up, but the next second Kinjiro Akiyama heard Hana's cool, distinct voice stammering as she said, "Sorry, boss, we came to pay." Chapter 5. The owner was stunned. She picked up a cloth and wiped her hands, looking at Kinjiro Akiyama with confusion as she asked, "What?" Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed so hard Kinjiro Akiyama nearly couldn't stand up. "I have WeChat with the owner, and every time I just transfer money directly." Kinjiro Akiyama also asked Hana to take the day off from the homeroom teacher, but Hana, being a bit naive, believes whatever Kinjiro Akiyama says. Hana seemed a bit unhappy. She moved her lips and, without saying anything, turned and started walking back. Kinjiro Akiyama chased after her, babbling nonstop. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted you to talk a little more. Hana, your voice is really nice. Can you talk more often? Kinjiro Akiyama said. Hana, repeat after me. Kinjiro is really handsome. I like Kinjiro. Hana's cheeks turned even redder, and she suddenly stopped. She turned her head, looked at Kinjiro Akiyama for 2 seconds, and spat out a few words with annoyance. You're shameless. Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't hold back a laugh. Kinjiro Akiyama said, Hana, your voice really is nice. She'd said that, yet Kinjiro Akiyama kept laughing. She probably had never met someone with such thick skin before. Hana decided to ignore Kinjiro Akiyama, huffing in anger as she continued walking ahead. That night, campus ruler transferred 10,000 yuan to Kinjiro Akiyama. He said, Hana talked at home today. She asked me, why do Dad's shoes smell so bad? Master, you're the lucky star of our whole family. Kinjiro Akiyama collapsed onto the bed, imagining Hana frowning, which was just too cute. Kinjiro Akiyama pulled out his phone and sent a message to Hana, but just then the phone rang. Annoyed, Kinjiro Akiyama hung up. Akari again. After blocking her call in WeChat, she started calling Kinjiro Akiyama from her mom's phone. Akari and Kinjiro Akiyama live across the hall from each other, and her mother is really nice to Kinjiro Akiyama. She's good friends with Kinjiro Akiyama's mom. No matter how rebellious Kinjiro Akiyama gets, Kinjiro Akiyama can't bring himself to block an elder. Kinjiro Akiyama scratched his head irritably and threw his phone aside. What's wrong with Akari? Since we were kids, I've always been chasing after her, and she's never called me once. It's always been me annoying her. Kinjiro Akiyama opened their chat history. Almost all of it was Kinjiro Akiyama sending messages while she would take forever to reply, often just with a or oh. Just as Kinjiro Akiyama was scrolling, Kinjiro Akiyama noticed a message from Hana. Kinjiro Akiyama expected her to be as cold as when they first met, but since they added each other on WeChat, Hana replies to every message Kinjiro Akiyama sends, although it's just 1 or 2 simple words. Kinjiro Akiyama felt an unprecedented sense of fulfillment on a spiritual level. She even stole Kinjiro Akiyama's emojis to reply to Kinjiro Akiyama. Later, when Kinjiro Akiyama sent her some suggestive and inappropriate emojis, she stopped stealing them. Maybe Hana, the autistic girl, just doesn't like talking, but she's pretty enthusiastic on the internet. Good morning, Hana. Kinjiro Akiyama greeted her with a smile. The aloof goddess didn't say anything, just glanced at Kinjiro Akiyama. Kinjiro Akiyama found it a bit strange. Was she unusually quiet today? The next second, Kinjiro Akiyama saw the breakfast on Kinjiro Akiyama's desk. Kinjiro Akiyama was shocked and said, Did you bring this for me? Hana nodded, then shook her head and said, My brother did. Her words were still few, but Kinjiro Akiyama understood. Kinjiro Akiyama laughed and said, Then thank your brother for me. These soup dumplings are so hard to get. Kinjiro Akiyama ate with grease all over his mouth, while Hana handed Kinjiro Akiyama a tissue. Akari walked up, looking irritated as she glared at Kinjiro Akiyama, and said, What do you want from me? You won't answer the phone, and you won't reply to messages. You live so close, but you act like a mouse. I can't even see you. Kinjiro Akiyama put the bowl on the table and replied, If you know I'm avoiding you, then don't show up in front of me. Akari was so angry her chest was heaving. She retorted, You don't seriously think that a rich girl like me would be interested in a loser like you, right? Kinjiro Akiyama paused chewing, and Hana stopped handing Kinjiro Akiyama tissues. She looked up at Akari coldly, and Kinjiro Akiyama slammed his hand on the table and stood up angrily, rebuking Akari. We're still students. How can your mind be so dirty? All you think about is love and relationships? Is that the kind of thing a student should be focused on? As a classmate, you're not thinking about helping others, but here you are trying to sow discord. Akari opened her mouth, but Kinjiro Akiyama immediately cut her off. Kinjiro Akiyama said, Or maybe you've started dating early, and that's why all you can think about is this stuff. Akari was really pissed now. Biting her lip, she said, Kinjiro, I'm saying this because I consider you a good friend, but Hana, with her rich family. Before she could finish, The cold voice of their homeroom teacher came from behind. Come to my office. Kinjiro Akiyama almost died laughing, but when Kinjiro Akiyama turned around, Kinjiro Akiyama saw Hana staring at Kinjiro Akiyama intently, her eyes dark with depth. Before Kinjiro Akiyama could say anything, she pursed her lips and turned her head away. Kinjiro Akiyama rubbed his forehead. Great, the little princess is mad again. Kinjiro Akiyama leaned in and tried to comfort her. You really don't need help. I was wrong. It's me. I need your help. Can I copy your homework? Hana ignored Kinjiro Akiyama and kept nudging Kinjiro Akiyama with her elbow. The next second, Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly flicked her elbow with his finger, directly hitting her funny bone. Hana hugged her arm and bit her lip. What are you doing? Ouch, Kinjiro Akiyama said. Sorry. It's just that abstract video you shared with me yesterday. I can't find it. Can you send it to me again? She snorted but still ignored Kinjiro Akiyama. Kinjiro Akiyama sighed and laid down on the table in resignation. Not 2 minutes later, Kinjiro Akiyama's phone vibrated. Kinjiro Akiyama pulled it out from the desk drawer and saw Hana's transfer. She wrote, Keep helping me. Our family has money. Don't talk to her. I hate her. This brother and sister's cash power. Who could resist that? Kinjiro Akiyama clutched his chest and, without hesitation, accepted the money. Campus ruler said he wanted to take Kinjiro Akiyama out to dinner and that his parents wanted to thank Kinjiro Akiyama in person. Hana had been talking more and more at home recently. Although it was just short texts, it gave them hope. Kinjiro Akiyama waved his hand and said, These are just small problems. Chapter 6. Actually, Hana is quite different from regular people. On average, when Kinjiro Akiyama speaks 100 words, she'll respond with 2 or 3, and that's already pretty good. As the summer holidays approached, Kinjiro Akiyama was discussing travel destinations with his friends in the next class. Having made a small profit recently, Kinjiro Akiyama was planning to take a trip abroad with his friends during the summer. Kinjiro Akiyama felt a burning gaze from his side. Turning around, Kinjiro Akiyama found Hana staring at Kinjiro Akiyama's phone. Seeing she was interested, Kinjiro Akiyama casually opened something and asked, Hana, where would you like to go? She didn't respond, just coldly looked away. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't expect her to answer anyway. Then Hana's cold voice came from beside Kinjiro Akiyama. She asked, Are you going during the summer? Kinjiro Akiyama replied, Yeah, I'm thinking about going to the US. Kinjiro Akiyama casually invited, Would you like to go? Hana went silent again. Kinjiro Akiyama kept twirling his pen and scrolled to the next video. The girl in front of Kinjiro Akiyama turned around excitedly, sharing with Kinjiro Akiyama the tourist spots she visited last year in the US. Hana seemed to say something, but it was too quick for Kinjiro Akiyama to hear. Kinjiro Akiyama turned around and found that she had already laid her head on the desk, silent. She was mad again. Recently, Hana has been getting upset for no apparent reason. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't know what was wrong, so Kinjiro Akiyama poked her twice, but she didn't respond. So Kinjiro Akiyama just went back to doing his own thing. Soon it was time to leave school. When Kinjiro Akiyama finished packing his bag and looked up, Kinjiro Akiyama saw Hana, already packed, and standing at the classroom door. She was standing outside, the sunset casting its glow on her side profile. Kinjiro Akiyama knew she was waiting for Kinjiro Akiyama. Kinjiro Akiyama hurried up, thinking Kinjiro Akiyama'd ask her later why she was upset. But the next second, Akari's face suddenly appeared in front of Kinjiro Akiyama, giving Kinjiro Akiyama a shock. Kinjiro Akiyama sighed and said, What do you want now? Kinjiro Akiyama frowned at her. Akari casually tossed Kinjiro Akiyama a set of keys. She snorted and said, Your mom tried calling you, but you didn't answer. She told me to let you know that they're going out for a week, and my parents will take care of you. She wants you to stay at my place. Kinjiro Akiyama took a deep breath and said, Can't I just order takeout at home? When Kinjiro Akiyama looked up again, Hana had already left. Kinjiro Akiyama scratched his head in frustration and rushed out, but Hana was gone. Kinjiro Akiyama thinks Kinjiro Akiyama understood why Hana was upset now. She seemed to have a special possessiveness toward Kinjiro Akiyama. She'd get upset when Kinjiro Akiyama talked to the girl in front of Kinjiro Akiyama, and she'd get even angrier when Kinjiro Akiyama talked to Akari. But Kinjiro Akiyama didn't think she was unreasonable at all. Kinjiro Akiyama thought it was incredibly cute. Isn't possessiveness just the start of liking someone? Chapter 7. Kinjiro Akiyama kicked a stone, walking home in boredom. Recently, Kinjiro Akiyama had gotten so used to taking Hana's family's car that walking home again was a sudden shock. Kinjiro Akiyama's feet really did start to hurt. Kinjiro Akiyama heard some rustling behind Kinjiro Akiyama, and when Kinjiro Akiyama turned around, there was nothing there. Kinjiro Akiyama rubbed his arms, feeling a chill, and frowned. I'm not being followed by some thug, am I? Kinjiro Akiyama took a few more steps, but still there were barely noticeable footsteps behind Kinjiro Akiyama. Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly turned around, and there stood Hana, frozen. A smile flickered across Kinjiro Akiyama's face as Kinjiro Akiyama walked towards her. Hana stood still, looking like she wanted to hide, but there wasn't even a trash can nearby, so her steps froze. Hana's CPU must have overheated again. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, Hana, are you following me? She averted her eyes from Kinjiro Akiyama's face, lowered her head, and slowly walked by Kinjiro Akiyama's side, silent. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, Where's your car? She whispered, I sent my brother home. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, Then why aren't you going back? She remained silent again. Kinjiro Akiyama grinned mischievously and leaned in closer, asking, Are you reluctant to leave me? Hana didn't say anything. Her steps faltered a bit, and she nearly tripped over from Kinjiro Akiyama's teasing. She bit her lip and said, We have plenty of rooms at home. Kinjiro Akiyama kept talking, and by the time they reached the bottom of Kinjiro Akiyama's building, Hana, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke up. Her voice was soft as she said, Would you like to stay at my place? Kinjiro Akiyama froze, staring at her, and asked, What did you say? Hana's eyes seemed to have tiny stars in them as she stared at Kinjiro Akiyama without repeating herself. Kinjiro Akiyama instantly realized she must have heard what Akari said. Kinjiro Akiyama found it amusing and laughed, saying, I'm not going to Akari's place, don't worry. Hana's face seemed to soften a bit, and she nodded, saying, Kinjiro Akiyama kicked the stone up by Kinjiro Akiyama's feet and asked, Hana, do you like me? A flash of panic crossed Hana's face, and her loose hair covered her expression. She looked down too quickly for Kinjiro Akiyama to see anything clearly. Kinjiro Akiyama decided to just tease her, chuckling and waving his hand at her. All right, go back now. It's truly my honor to take a walk with the young lady. Watching Hana disappear from Kinjiro Akiyama's view, Kinjiro Akiyama turned to head home, but then Kinjiro Akiyama's parents suddenly appeared in front of Kinjiro Akiyama, giving Kinjiro Akiyama a shock. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, Aren't you two on a business trip? Kinjiro Akiyama's mom's face was serious. She said, Your grandmother's sick. I've already asked for leave from both you and your teacher. Since you only have a week left before summer vacation, we'll head to Grandma's place directly. Grandma's place wasn't close, which meant Kinjiro Akiyama wouldn't be able to go to school tomorrow. So Kinjiro Akiyama took out his phone to message Hana and turned to follow his parents to Grandma's house. Late at night, Kinjiro Akiyama scrolled through his phone, but still hadn't received a reply from Hana. Kinjiro Akiyama frowned as Kinjiro Akiyama scrolled up through the chat history, wondering, is she still mad? The signal in the village wasn't great, and all the messages Kinjiro Akiyama sent had red exclamation marks. After messing with his phone late into the night, Kinjiro Akiyama only managed to send 3 messages, but Hana still hadn't replied. Kinjiro Akiyama sighed helplessly and threw his phone aside. But on the 3rd night, in the stillness of the night, a stone suddenly fell by Kinjiro Akiyama's window. Kinjiro Akiyama froze for a moment, instinctively walked over to the windowsill, and couldn't help but widen his eyes as Kinjiro Akiyama saw a cold, clear girl standing below. The silver moonlight illuminated her, casting a long shadow. Kinjiro Akiyama ran downstairs without shoes on. Hana stood by the wild grass in the countryside, her arms covered in mosquito bites, with several swollen bumps. She kept raising her hand to swat them away, her movements stiff like a delicate wind-up doll. Kinjiro Akiyama found it amusing and asked, What are you doing here? Kinjiro Akiyama didn't expect her to answer, but she actually looked Kinjiro Akiyama in the eye and said pitifully, I couldn't reach you. Kinjiro Akiyama froze for a moment and asked, "Didn't I send you a message?" She replied, "I lost my phone." She bit her lip, a flash of frustration passing through her eyes. She said, "On my way home, my phone was stolen." Kinjiro Akiyama felt a little sorry for her. It was probably the first time the young lady had walked home and had to deal with a pickpocket. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, "How did you find your way here?" She said, "I asked your friend." Kinjiro Akiyama was surprised, someone like Hana actually asking others for directions. The more Kinjiro Akiyama thought about it, the funnier it seemed, and Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but smile. Hana seemed a little annoyed by Kinjiro Akiyama's laughter. Chapter 8. She pouted and said, "I thought you were mad at me." Kinjiro Akiyama froze for a moment and asked, "Mad at what?" She didn't answer Kinjiro Akiyama's question. It was rare for Hana to say so much, so Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but tease her. "Hana, with you talking so much today, I feel like kissing you." Her eyes widened as if she was upset that Kinjiro Akiyama interrupted her, and maybe even surprised that Kinjiro Akiyama would say something so shameless. But her ears were bright red. She said, "You asked me if I was reluctant to leave you. When I didn't respond, you got mad." Under the moonlight, the girl's expression was especially serious. She said, "Yes, I'm reluctant to leave you." Kinjiro Akiyama stood there stunned, listening to her talking to herself. This girl must have lost her mind. She seemed dissatisfied with Kinjiro Akiyama's reaction, her pout getting higher and higher. She asked, "What about you? Are you reluctant to leave me?" Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly realized Hana probably thought that when Kinjiro Akiyama asked her that question the other night, and she didn't respond, Kinjiro Akiyama got mad and ignored her, so now she was anxious to catch up with Kinjiro Akiyama here. What kind of question was, "Are you reluctant?" Did I ever ask something like that? Kinjiro Akiyama had an idea and grinned. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "Hana, do you mean you like me and you're now asking if I like you?" Hana froze, and then Kinjiro Akiyama saw her face turn as red as her ears. She said, "Yes." Her expression was just too cute. Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but want to hold her in his arms and mess with her. In fact, Kinjiro Akiyama did exactly that. After all, Kinjiro Akiyama's always been a bold person when it comes to matters like this. So Kinjiro Akiyama asked, "Hana, can I touch you?" Kinjiro Akiyama laughed mischievously. Hana, sounding a bit helpless, replied, "You already have." All right, I'll go ahead and do it." "First permission granted?" Kinjiro Akiyama asked. "How did you get here?" She turned her head and glanced at the area not far off. Kinjiro Akiyama was shocked to realize that their usual driver was parked by the village entrance, covered in mosquito bites, desperately swatting them away. Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but smirk and said, "You should go back. I'll head back tomorrow too." She nodded and moved Kinjiro Akiyama's hand away from her chest. She said, "See you tomorrow." Kinjiro Akiyama was overjoyed. When Hana used to say goodbye, she would just turn and leave without a word, but now she said, "See you tomorrow." Love is truly great, Kinjiro Akiyama thought. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't expect that when Kinjiro Akiyama got back, the first person Kinjiro Akiyama'd see wasn't Hana, but Akari. She was blocking Kinjiro Akiyama's door and asked, "Where have you been these last few days?" Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't be bothered to deal with her, but Kinjiro Akiyama's parents were unusually friendly, greeting her warmly. "Akari, Kinjiro's grandmother isn't well, so we went back to the hometown. Isn't school about to start vacation? Since Kinjiro can't go to school these few days, could you bring back any workbooks for us?" Akari always acted so sweet in front of Kinjiro Akiyama's parents. Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't stand her fake, over-the-top manner, so Kinjiro Akiyama grabbed his suitcase and turned to head inside. As soon as Kinjiro Akiyama walked in, the phone rang. It was Hana. She said she was downstairs. Kinjiro Akiyama replied, "Mom, I'm going to take out the trash." Excited, Kinjiro Akiyama grabbed the trash bag and rushed downstairs. Hana was squatting by the trash can, looking like a little cat abandoned by its owner. Kinjiro Akiyama swallowed hard. Damn, how can there be such a stunning beauty in the world? And such a stunning beauty is my girlfriend. Who could possibly understand this? Kinjiro Akiyama felt an overwhelming sense of emotion and rushed over in just a few steps. Hana stood up, and Kinjiro Akiyama quickly pulled her into his arms. She was momentarily stunned, and then a smile spread across her eyes. Hana still wasn't used to smiling. She tried to lift the corners of her lips, but it looked more like a forced, professional smile. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't mind. With Hana being this beautiful, even picking her nose would look stunning. Kinjiro Akiyama held her as Kinjiro Akiyama spoke, babbling about everything that happened at Grandma's house. Like before, Hana quietly listened, occasionally nodding. She still didn't talk much, but Kinjiro Akiyama was completely enchanted by her obedient, sweet demeanor. When Kinjiro Akiyama realized it was getting late, Kinjiro Akiyama reluctantly said goodbye to her. Kinjiro Akiyama leaned down and planted a light kiss on her cheek. Satisfied as Kinjiro Akiyama watched Hana turn as red as a boiled shrimp, Kinjiro Akiyama playfully slapped her on the behind and said, "All right, I'm heading back." So this is what it feels like to tease your girlfriend. But as Kinjiro Akiyama reached the stairs, Kinjiro Akiyama nearly had a heart attack. Chapter 9. Akari's face was dark with anger. Behind her were Kinjiro Akiyama's parents. Hana stood not far away. Akari's voice was low, just enough for the two of them to hear, as she bit her lip and said, "Kinjiro, your love is so cheap, you can give it away so quickly to someone else." Kinjiro Akiyama coldly stared at her. Kinjiro Akiyama replied, "So what? Should I keep being your shameless, spineless simp?" Kinjiro Akiyama's parents had always known that Kinjiro Akiyama liked Akari. Akari turned to Kinjiro Akiyama's mom and gave her a slight smile. "Auntie, it's that girl. She's tempting Kinjiro into early romance." Kinjiro Akiyama widened his eyes in shock. Kinjiro Akiyama's mom looked at Hana, who was walking toward them, her face pale, and frowned lightly. "Early romance? What early romance? Kinjiro is already an adult, right? Then how about that girl? Is she not an adult?" Kinjiro Akiyama smiled and quickly replied, "She's only 1 month younger than me." Kinjiro Akiyama's mom let out a sigh of relief, looking at Hana standing in front of them with satisfaction. "Well then, that's fine, isn't it?" Akari, looking incredulous, said, "Auntie." Kinjiro Akiyama silently watched as her defense crumbled. Kinjiro Akiyama forgot to tell her the reason Kinjiro Akiyama's mom liked her so much was because Kinjiro Akiyama's mom was all about looks. In front of Hana, Akari was completely outclassed. Hana stood behind Kinjiro Akiyama, politely greeting Kinjiro Akiyama's parents. She said, "Hello, uncle." "Hello, auntie." Kinjiro Akiyama's mom was absolutely thrilled, raising her eyebrows at Kinjiro Akiyama. "She's so beautiful." Akari bit her lip, and in that moment she could no longer hold back her resentment. She trembled as she said, "Auntie, she has a mental illness. She's a mentally ill patient, and she's autistic." The air went completely still. Hana's face turned as pale as a ghost. Kinjiro Akiyama's blood boiled, and without a word, Kinjiro Akiyama stepped forward and slapped Akari across the face. Kinjiro Akiyama had wanted to do this for a long time, ever since the first time she insulted Kinjiro Akiyama. Ever since she first said Hana was sick. Kinjiro Akiyama spoke slowly and clearly. "I think the person with the problem is you. Get out." Akari looked up, her face swollen and red, but no one spoke up for her. She gritted her teeth in anger. Kinjiro Akiyama turned and stormed off toward her home. Hana stood there, pale, looking a little lost. Kinjiro Akiyama moved in front of her, about to defend her, but she grabbed Kinjiro Akiyama's arm, gently shook it, and took a step forward. Hana's voice trembled, even stuttering a little. She said, "Uncle, Auntie, my illness, it's almost gone. This kind of illness won't take control of me. I really like Kinjiro. I'll be fine. I'll be good to Kinjiro. I'll be good to him." Kinjiro Akiyama's eyes welled up with emotion. Kinjiro Akiyama's parents didn't say anything more. Hana walked away, her face still pale. Kinjiro Akiyama pulled her into his arms and took the opportunity to give her another kiss. Satisfied as Kinjiro Akiyama watched her turn as red as a boiled shrimp, Kinjiro Akiyama said, "It's okay. I'll handle things with my parents." Kinjiro Akiyama turned and headed back inside. Kinjiro Akiyama's mom was sitting in the living room, rubbing her temples, saying, "Kinjiro, it's not that we're against it, but dating a normal person would be much better than dating someone with psychological issues." She tried her best to be gentle about it. Kinjiro Akiyama knew Kinjiro Akiyama's mom wasn't just worried about Kinjiro Akiyama, but also concerned about Kinjiro Akiyama doing something that might hurt Hana in the future. Kinjiro Akiyama nodded and said, "Mom, I like her. When she first met me, she could hardly say a word. And now look at her. She spoke so much to you today. I believe she'll be fine. I will love her with all my heart and treat her well." Kinjiro Akiyama's mom nodded, and in the end, she didn't say anything more. Chapter 10. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't expect Hana to act so quickly. That evening, she sent Kinjiro Akiyama a message. "Can you come to my house for dinner tomorrow? My parents want to meet you." Sitting in the car, Kinjiro Akiyama nervously dug his nails deep into the palm of his hand. Hana wrapped her hand around Kinjiro Akiyama's arm and leaned her head on Kinjiro Akiyama's shoulder. She wasn't good at comforting people. She told Kinjiro Akiyama, "You're great. My parents will agree in a day." Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly remembered her once coldly, saying to Kinjiro Akiyama, "Shameless." For some reason, Kinjiro Akiyama wasn't nervous anymore. Kinjiro Akiyama had imagined many scenarios. For example, Hana's parents, high and mighty, glaring at Kinjiro Akiyama coldly. Maybe when Hana wasn't paying attention, her mom would slap a check in Kinjiro Akiyama's face, asking Kinjiro Akiyama to stay away from her daughter. But when the car pulled into the driveway, Kinjiro Akiyama was stunned. Hana's parents stood in 2 rows with their servants, all dressed in bright red outfits, like they were attending a wedding. Campus rulers stood in the middle, holding a huge banner that read, "Welcome the Liu family savior, young Master Kinjiro, to our humble abode." Humble abode. Kinjiro Akiyama twitched the corner of his mouth. This massive villa with such luxurious decoration, this was a humble abode. Hana's mother grabbed Kinjiro Akiyama's hand, tears in her eyes. So emotional, she looked like she might kneel down. She said, "Kinjiro, you must be good to our Hana. You don't know how many psychologists I've found for her, how many companions, both male and female. Those little friends can't even stay with Hana for more than a week. But you." She paused for a moment and continued, "Only someone as strong, determined, and interesting as you could open Hana's heart." Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't help but twitch his mouth. "Auntie, what you actually meant to say was, someone as shameless as me could open her heart, right?" But Kinjiro Akiyama wasn't upset. After all, this love was something Kinjiro Akiyama practically barged into and took. That night, Kinjiro Akiyama lay in bed scrolling through his phone when Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly received a sticker from Hana. Sneaky observation. "Good grief, she's stealing my stickers again." Kinjiro Akiyama replied, "What's up?" Before Kinjiro Akiyama could even finish typing, Hana sent Kinjiro Akiyama a video. As Sunro Akiyama opened it, Kinjiro Akiyama was hit by the beauty filter from the other side. Hana seemed like she had just taken a shower, with wet hair sticking to her cheek, droplets of water sliding down her forehead, blowing along her delicate jawline and collarbone, gathering in a curve on her slightly rising chest, and finally disappearing into the deep neckline of her camisole. Chapter 11. So white. Kinjiro Akiyama whitened his eyes, barely able to believe that this was his adorable little cat. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, "Hana, why aren't you wearing a jacket?" Her snow-white skin had taken on a pink hue, and she seemed extremely embarrassed. She quickly grabbed some clothes from the side and put them on. She said, "I wanted you to see." Oh dear, this girl just says whatever is on her mind. Seeing Kinjiro Akiyama's speechless expression, Hana looked a little lost. She said she had searched on her phone last night how to make her boyfriend like her more. He's a bit perverted. Okay, he's very perverted. AI told her that if she wanted to keep a man's heart, she had to cater to his likes. But honestly, Kinjiro Akiyama hadn't reacted much other than being shocked. Kinjiro Akiyama still hadn't spoken, since it seemed like she thought she had done something wrong. Kinjiro Akiyama looked into her frustrated eyes, cleared his throat, and said, "It's fine. You did well." As soon as Kinjiro Akiyama spoke, saliva slipped out of his mouth. The air was quiet for a moment. Kinjiro Akiyama's face immediately turned red. "No, it was just that I was in such an awkward position that the drool came out. I wasn't actually that hungry. This is so embarrassing." Hana's eyes were sparkling as she sat obediently in front of her phone, but Kinjiro Akiyama kept feeling like she was laughing at Kinjiro Akiyama. She said, Kinjiro, would you go to the US with me? She bit her lip, looking at Kinjiro Akiyama cautiously. Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly remembered what she had said that day. Kinjiro Akiyama asked her if she wanted to go together, and she said, yes. Chapter 12. Before Kinjiro Akiyama could say anything, she turned and walked away. Kinjiro Akiyama was stunned. Are we leaving now? Does it have to be this urgent? Less than a minute later, Hana reappeared on video, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling as she held something in her hand. She said, my brother can pay. Kinjiro Akiyama was speechless. How should I put it? In this world, aside from beautiful women, perhaps the most alluring thing is the black card in Hana's hand. A beautiful woman with a black card. Who could resist? Kinjiro Akiyama cleared his throat. This damn woman really is charming. The news that Kinjiro Akiyama was going to travel with his girlfriend somehow reached Akari's mother. The night before they were supposed to leave, Kinjiro Akiyama was packing with his back to the door when Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly turned around and saw Akari. She looked a little thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept well. She quietly said, my mom asked you to come for dinner. Seemingly afraid Kinjiro Akiyama would refuse, she added, your mom is here too. Akari's mother had always been kind to Kinjiro Akiyama. Whenever Kinjiro Akiyama's parents were on a business trip, Kinjiro Akiyama'd stay at Akari's house and eat. She had also tried both openly and subtly to match Kinjiro Akiyama up with Akari, but Akari thought Kinjiro Akiyama was too talkative. It wasn't awkward eating dinner, they were all adults. But afterward, Akari's mother brought out a huge photo album. Kinjiro Akiyama's smile froze, and Kinjiro Akiyama sat uneasily. She said to Kinjiro Akiyama's mom, look, this is when they used to dance together when they were kids. This one, a dog bit Akari's butt, and Kinjiro, that brave boy, pulled the dog's tail while biting it. Kinjiro Akiyama was speechless, and Akari's face looked even worse. Kinjiro Akiyama's mom sat by, smiling faintly, but no one said anything. Akari's mother seemed a little embarrassed. She said, in the blink of an eye, both of them have grown up. Kinjiro has always been so considerate towards Akari since they were little. I always thought that she'd definitely marry him. But look at this, in the blink of an eye they've started having conflicts. Akari hasn't smiled at home in days. Kinjiro, you should talk to Akari more often when you have the time. Kinjiro Akiyama took a deep breath and slowly stood up. Kinjiro Akiyama said, Auntie, if there's nothing else, I'll head back. She didn't say anything, just watched Kinjiro Akiyama leave in silence. As soon as Kinjiro Akiyama stepped out, Kinjiro Akiyama was startled by someone standing at the door, nearly jumping out of his skin. The motion sensor light hadn't turned on yet, and there was Hana squatting at Kinjiro Akiyama's doorstep, looking like a little cat abandoned by its owner. Kinjiro Akiyama asked, what are you doing here? Kinjiro Akiyama nervously glanced behind Kinjiro Akiyama, relieved that Akari hadn't followed, otherwise Hana's pretty face would have been squished again. Hana looked up at Kinjiro Akiyama with a pitiful expression and said, you didn't pick up your phone. Kinjiro Akiyama awkwardly scratched his head. Kinjiro Akiyama had been so focused on eating that Kinjiro Akiyama forgot about the phone. Hana's eyes were a bit red, and she stared at Kinjiro Akiyama steadily. Kinjiro Akiyama said, so you came all the way here in the middle of the night? Just as the motion sensor light turned off, she suddenly threw herself into Kinjiro Akiyama's arms. Her voice trembled as she said, I'm scared. Kinjiro Akiyama blinked, confused by what she meant, but Hana held Kinjiro Akiyama so tightly that Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't break free. Kinjiro Akiyama had no choice but to reach up and gently stroke her hair, like petting a little cat. In the dimly lit stairwell, Kinjiro Akiyama thought Kinjiro Akiyama heard a door open behind Kinjiro Akiyama, only for it to quickly shut again. Kinjiro Akiyama gently pushed Hana away, sighing as Kinjiro Akiyama said, what are you afraid of? Are you worried I won't go with you tomorrow, or that I'll change my mind after just one meal? Hana's eyes were wet, and she bit her lip, not saying anything. Kinjiro Akiyama reached up and pinched the sides of her mouth, turning it into a circle, and said, talk. She quietly said, you've liked her for a long time, but you haven't liked me for long. Kinjiro Akiyama cupped Hana's face in his hands, gently kneading her cute face like dough. Kinjiro Akiyama said, Beautiful. Do you ever look in the mirror? Please don't use this breathtakingly beautiful face to act self-conscious, okay? It's too much of a cheat. I'll start thinking, thinking about things. Hannah blinked, and the flesh on her face squished together, looking like a cartoon character. She asked, what does thinking about things mean? Kinjiro Akiyama cleared his throat, deciding not to corrupt her right now. I'll teach her gradually through experience. Kinjiro Akiyama didn't explain, and Hannah didn't press further. She nodded obediently and followed Kinjiro Akiyama home to pack. She could always ask AI at night. AI knew a lot. When Kinjiro Akiyama's mom walked in, she saw Hannah packing while Kinjiro Akiyama sat with his legs crossed, talking nonstop. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "You don't really need to bring this, do you? What's the point of that? We need to travel light and only bring what's useful." Kinjiro Akiyama added, "The SpongeBob that squirts water, definitely bring that." Hannah was getting a bit frustrated, flipping through her things and repacking, taking things out and putting them back like an NPC. Kinjiro Akiyama's mom said, "Don't believe her." Kinjiro Akiyama's mom seemed a bit speechless, and Hannah flashed a smile at her. "Hello, Auntie." Kinjiro Akiyama's mom looked at her, hesitating to say something, but then gave up, seeing that Hannah seemed to be enjoying herself. After returning from the U.S., Hannah became even more clingy. She would either want to meet up or call Kinjiro Akiyama every day, and even if she didn't say anything, she just wanted to watch Kinjiro Akiyama. If it were someone else, they'd have probably gone crazy by now, but Kinjiro Akiyama's the type who talks nonstop. And in Kinjiro Akiyama's mom's words, Hannah and Kinjiro Akiyama are like the perfect match. What pot fits what lid? Chapter 13. Not long after Akari moved away, Kinjiro Akiyama was talking to Hannah on the phone while walking out of the house. Kinjiro Akiyama's dad asked Kinjiro Akiyama to go downstairs and take out the trash, but when Kinjiro Akiyama opened the door, Kinjiro Akiyama ran into Akari, who was in the middle of moving things. Kinjiro Akiyama froze for a moment. She seemed to have lost quite a bit of weight. Her gaze lingered on Kinjiro Akiyama's face for a few seconds, and there was a sadness in her eyes that Kinjiro Akiyama couldn't quite read. Kinjiro Akiyama grabbed the trash and started walking downstairs. Suddenly, Kinjiro Akiyama heard Akari's voice from behind. "Kinjiro." Kinjiro Akiyama turned around. Akari stood at the top of the stairs, high up, just like how Kinjiro Akiyama had often looked up to her. But something seemed different this time. She lowered her head slightly, her voice trembling as she said, "I'm sorry. If I had faced my feelings sooner, if I hadn't said those harsh words to you, would you still have continued liking me?" Kinjiro Akiyama smiled and shook his head, then turned and walked downstairs. On the phone, Hannah's voice dropped a little. She said angrily, "You promised me. You weren't supposed to talk to her." Kinjiro Akiyama clicked his tongue. Kinjiro Akiyama said, "I haven't said anything, have I?" She took a deep breath and said, "You shook your head. How did she know? Why does she care about that?" Kinjiro Akiyama whitened his eyes. Has Princess Hannah gotten a little too spoiled lately? Kinjiro Akiyama suddenly remembered that not long after they started sitting together, she transferred Kinjiro Akiyama some money. She told Kinjiro Akiyama not to talk to Akari. At that time, she barely paid attention to Kinjiro Akiyama, so why would she make such a request? Kinjiro Akiyama asked, "Hannah, when did you start liking me?" Kinjiro Akiyama thought she wouldn't answer this question, but after a couple of seconds of silence, her voice softened with a smile. She said, "From the first moment I looked up at you, when the sunlight fell on the desk, I suddenly wanted to speak to you."